can see how bad I am. Inside, I'm having a conversation with everybody in my head, and it's not a good one.
Gotcha. All right. Well, are we ready to get started, Alan?
Yeah, so let me say what I was saying, and for the benefit of those that I was trying to say it to. I first of all wanted to let you know that who we have today, our focus and our effort is that we are focusing, number one, on our SBDC advisors that are seasoned, have been to Washington or to a national conference with SBIR. So we're hoping to help you with clients that you've been working with for more than 2 years. So that's one group. The second group are those of you that you would say maybe you don't even have an innovator client, or you have one or two and you really don't know what to do with them. This today is not for you to ignore. We hope you focus and understand some of the opportunities and how something like this can help you as well. We have some really good talent on today, and we've talked to them. We're helping them understand. They know about Encountering Innovation. They know about our efforts and what we're doing. So this is not just a bland presentation that we hope you participate in but don't do anything with. We hope you actually take it to heart and it can help you. With that in mind, I'll turn it over to Laurie, and I'll mute myself to where, well, and I guess the point of how we say it, room rules, we can't see you, you participants. So as we're going, if you have a question with what's being covered at that time, if you'll go ahead and type a question, we'll try to capture it while whichever one's presenting to where we can capture it at that time while they're talking. Otherwise, they'll take questions and answers at the end and encourage participation and questions. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Laurie.
And Laurie, is this being recorded, and are these slides available?
Yes.
Yes. Yes and yes.
Okay, just verifying.
Sure. So I just wanted to get started to welcome everyone and to introduce Brad Pantuck, who is with the Office of Naval Research, and Ray Friesenhahn, who is with TechLink, which is, you all may be familiar with, is a PIA out of Montana that supports a lot of different OSD and DoD organizations. So I wanted to bring this presentation here today because I, for one, think that RIF, the Rapid Innovation Fund, is super, super important. It's yet another collaborative vehicle that assists small businesses to tie their technologies into the Department of Defense and to insert technology in rapidly. It's administered by the Undersecretary of Defense under R&E and the Small Business Technology Partnerships. And it's not stipulated that this program specifically go to SBIR recipients. However, I will say that it is a great next step for SBIR recipients. And the big thing I really, really want to emphasize how important this program is. Unfortunately, they did not fund it in FY20. There's a lot of folks, and I'm one of those very, very vocal folks that says we need more programs for small business, not less. So I hope you guys will listen, ask lots of questions, get information about the RIF program, and we're gonna keep pushing, and I ask all of you to keep pushing on your end to emphasize the need for small businesses to have all the funding resources they can to accelerate technologies. Brad is the architect of the Navy's RIF program, so super, super familiar with RIF, administered it, and is our expert in the Navy side. And then Ray and TechLink were commissioned by the Department of Defense to do a study on the impact. And what I think by the time Brad introduces you to the program and Ray talks about the impact from a study that they recently connected, I think you guys will all be big RIF fans and cheerleaders as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brad.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Brad Pantuck. I'm calling in from Alexandria, Virginia, close to the Office of Naval Research, which is in Arlington, Virginia. So like Laurie said, I've been supporting the Navy RIF program since 2012, so I'm very familiar with it. It's been my life's work for, gosh, like 8 years. So I was involved day to day in running the program for many years now. I'm mainly in quality assurance, and I do a fair amount of going out, speaking with organizations like yours and helping small businesses figure out how to compete effectively. I'm going to speak, kind of give a high-level overview of the program and how we've administered it over the years. Next slide, please. Okay, so RIF started in FY11. Congress set it up. It wasn't something that the services asked for. It was something that the Congress thought was a good idea. They wanted to tap into the innovation that happens in our country's small businesses, primarily. They wanted to refresh defense acquisition programs with new tech that could either increase capability or save costs. Pragmatically, the DoD spends $1 billion a year on SBIR. And Congress saw that, and there's just a reality, as you all know, as counselors of many companies that are in the SBIR game, that many of the prototypes developed through the SBIR program don't actually make it into the hands of a warfighter. They don't actually benefit the military. So that was a big driver behind setting up RIF, is to, I like to say, harvest the fruit on the SBIR vines. You don't have to come through the SBIR program to compete in RIF, like Laurie said, but many folks do. So RIF doesn't pay for basic science. It pays for the advanced engineering and the testing necessary prior to deployment on a major military weapon systems. Small businesses historically have appreciated the program. One of the main reasons has been it helps get them out of R&D contracts and into production contracts, where they're actually selling units to the military. Government PMs and primes have typically appreciated the program because it de-risks technology and helps them innovate. And Congress has historically supported the program for all those reasons, as well as because it's a door that they can point their constituents to in this post-earmark era that we're living in. And Ray and TechLink will make more comments about that. But truly, what the program is trying to accomplish is not find cool new stuff. The program is trying to deploy technology into acquisition programs. It's very, very simple. We're a no kidding transition venue. We're trying to match mature technologies with government program managers that have a need and money to pay for that need in the out years. We're trying to bring those two people together. So I'm going to make some remarks about how we've tried to do that over the years. And Ray from TechLink is going to comment about how effective we've actually been in doing that. Next slide, please. All right, so every year since FY11, we've announced ourselves in the form of a broad agency announcement. OSD issues that BAA on behalf of the services. Unfortunately, the BAA doesn't come out on a set schedule like the SBIR solicitation does. It has to wait until money is appropriated for the current budget year. And as you all know, oftentimes Congress doesn't pass budgets prior to the fiscal year. For example, just this week, Congress enacted a continuing resolution which funds the government from October 1st through December 11th. So hopefully, and Congress always passes a defense budget, hopefully they'll pass a defense budget before December 11th, which funds all of the DoD for the year, as well as there being a line item for RIF. And that may or may not happen. on the RIF piece. But historically, and in the next BIA, the criteria and rules are as follows. I'll start at the end of the BIA. There's always topics, just like in the SBIR solicitation, that there's topics, a description, a title, a description of the need, and a point of contact. And at the front, these are the source selection preference priorities. First, preference for small businesses. You don't have to be a small business, but there's a source selection preference for small businesses. To get that preference, you have to do 51% of the cost of the work or greater. So many companies can and do sub to larger companies to help with various aspects of RIF, and that can be a good approach. It's a two-phase process. This is something industry has always really appreciated about RIF. First, you put in a white paper, and a white paper consists of a quad chart and a 3-page technical description. So not too big of a level of effort to do that. If we like your white paper, we invite a full proposal. And a full proposal consists of a 25-page technical description, cost proposal, and a performance work statement. We're looking for TRL 5 or 6 at project inception. So these are mature prototypes that have been demonstrated in a relevant environment. If you have a little bit lower TRL, maybe TRL 4/5, we might take a risk on you if it's a really high impact technology or really high need. But typically, we really are looking for mature prototypes, TRL 6 ideally. You get 2 years to do your thing. Typically, a chunk of the first year is spent adapting your prototype technically. And then there's almost always a phase where you're testing that prototype. As you all know, before going into a military weapon system, you've got to prove that your technology is going to work every time, that it's hard enough, so commonly RIF pays for tests like interoperability testing or environmental qualification, information assurance assessment, these sorts of mil-spec sorts of tests. And that has to wrap up within 2 years. Within the Navy, and I'm speaking parochially here for the Navy, is we give ourselves another year to try to deploy that technology, to actually field it. It sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. And then the last bullet here is you get up to $3 million per project. So that's a pretty good chunk of change. Since FY11, that's been in law, up to $3 million. Project awards average about $2.1 million historically across the services. The FY20 NDAA actually increased the max on RIF projects to $6 million. Not all projects can be that high. The language is a little arcane, but some small percentage of the projects now can exceed $3 million. So that's, you know, an interesting tweak to the program if it ends up getting funded this coming year. Next slide, please. Okay, so a few stats. We've been at this for 9 cycles. So we have some pretty good data, and Ray will also speak to this a bit, I believe. But I'm just going to paint in broad brushstrokes. I know there's a lot of numbers. I'm just going to speak column by column, and I'm going to start with that first column, the white paper column. This is at just the Department of Navy, which includes the Navy and the Marine Corps. You can see that we get a whole lot of white papers. This is probably the it's about a 4% hit rate on your white paper getting picked. Unfortunately, a lot of folks have, and this is something to coach your small businesses on, a lot of folks have viewed RIF as kind of like buying a lottery ticket, right? It's easy to walk into 7-Eleven, put $3 over the counter and get a lottery ticket. It's long odds, and we get a lot of chaff in terms of white papers, and this ends up being a lot of work on the government side to evaluate them, and a fair amount of work on the industry side. This is what I would characterize as kind of one of the main difficult parts of the program. The next 2 columns are very much kind of the good news story. Is is that if you look at the number of full proposals that we invite compared to the number of contracts we award, you can see that we're quite respectful of the scarce business development dollars that small businesses have. We just invite a few alternates within the Department of Navy, and the Air Force and OSD and Army are pretty good about this as well. So if we invite a full proposal from folks, we're dead serious about their project. The next column, contract awards. You can see in FY11, Navy awarded $106 million. Inception year FY11, we were awash in cash and RIF. $400 million was appropriated. The Navy got about a quarter of it, and that's how it goes pretty much every year. Navy gets a quarter, Army gets a quarter, Air Force gets a quarter, and then the OSD defense agencies get a quarter of the money. Congress ended up appropriating about $250 million a year for the program the last 5 or 6 years. Other than FY20, which Laurie mentioned, they did not fund RIF, and we can get into some of the reasons for that, which are mainly speculation. So it remains to be seen whether RIF will be funded in FY21 and at what level. Next column is previous SBIR relationship. At the Navy, our stats are about 2/3 of our awards go to SBIR lineage technology. This is consistent with congressional intent to harvest fruit on the SBIR vines, and it's not surprising given the strategic alignment between the programs. You know, RIF is phase 3 SBIR, so in a lot of instances, the way it works is you get funded under phase 1 SBIR, you hit it out of the park, you get funded under SBIR phase 2, and then RIF is really the big leagues to take you into the promised land of production contract and deployment. Next slide. Few bits about how to compete effectively, and we could dive into this deeper down the line with your folks, Alan and Laurie, if RIF does get funded in FY21. But a few high level remarks to coach your small businesses up, and a lot of these remarks I'll say are applicable not just to RIF, but to defense, industry, business development in general. My first bit of advice is find your customer. To really increase your odds of winning at RIF, you don't want to be putting in cold to the BAA. Obviously, a lot of people do that, and they win doing that. But ideally, you want to find a program office with a need you can solve. In the huge bureaucracy of the DoD, your companies need to figure out who's buying what they're selling and cultivate relationships with those folks. Ultimately, to win at RIF, and frankly, a lot of other BAAs and opportunities is trying to find a champion for your technology. Spend time between BAAs trying to find that technology champions. They're going to have to fight for your technology to get selected. My next bit of advice is, and I will say that we have a team of folks listed at the end of this brief are some points of contact that work for me, and they will pick up the phone, and we're funded until through at least June of 2021, and we can, you SBDC counselors, like, lean on us. We can help multiply your efforts. We can coach your companies up for free. Like, we're paid by O&R to help companies figure out who in the Navy might be buying what they're selling. Don't send us immature technology, but if you have companies that are credible that you think are solving a Department of Navy need, and they have mature technology, please get them in touch with us. One of our roles is very much in tech scouting. So next bit of advice is learn your customers' needs. So not only do you need to learn about their technical needs and their gaps, but also about what testing they're going to require before they deploy your technology. Figure out their tech refresh schedule. If a prime or a subsystems integrator owns the platform that your company's component level technology is going to need to get onto, the company needs to figure out the prime's interface needs. and their testing requirements, etc. Next bit of advice is to bring sufficiently mature technology. I'm kind of foot stomping on this, but a common pitfall is to come to RIF kind of too early with immature technology. We really are looking for TRL 6 at inception, because we're trying to get it to TRL 8 within that 2-year period of performance. Last bit of advice is have a strong transition plan. You know, when you put in your submission to RIF, you're not only going to need to articulate the value of your technology, but you're going to have to describe what tests you're going to undertake for it to deploy. So that's all I have for my remarks, and now I'll hand it over to Ray from TechLink to talk, to add some context.
Thank you, Brad. I'm going to talk a little bit about the assessment that TechLink did. TechLink, by way of background, is the first and primary nationwide defense partnership intermediary. So we help companies work with the Department of Defense licensing, and I've been supporting SBIR outreach and support for small businesses for 25 years now. And when RIF came out, I was pretty excited about it as an opportunity for a lot of these SBIR firms. So that was a great thing. Go ahead with the next slide, Alan. Now, since I'm not a federal employee, I can tell you a little bit about the politics behind this. Some of you, most of you probably remember earmarks. It was something that was often abused. Certainly a lot of politicians caught flack for earmarks, which was funding that was written in for specific companies or others. And so, you know, because they were catching so much flack, in 2010, the House Armed Services Committee announced they were going to ban all for-profit earmarks. But the downside was that a lot of these small firms, especially the SBIR companies, often relied on earmarks. So there were some good things about earmarks that were being cut out too. These, especially SBIR firms, you know, were trying to get through the so-called valley of death, you know, because they had a prototype usually by the end of a phase 2, but there wasn't any dedicated funding for them to get into production or acquisition programs. That's the phase 3 that everyone talks about. And a lot of studies had recommended that there be a dedicated pot of money set aside for phase 3. So when the House Armed Services Committee announced the ban on earmarks for for-profits, they also put in a little bit that was really announcing the future RIF program, program for companies, especially the small startups, to present good ideas to DoD, but that was specifically stated that DoD would make the choice. And this is the RIF legislation in NDAA that was mentioned by Brad earlier. Almost a dedicated phase 3 fund, but it's open to everyone, including big companies, universities, and even foreign firms that I'll mention later. Now, you don't have to have SBIR previously, and I actually did have a small company here in Montana, very competent, but they were never able to get it together for an SBIR win. I did help them find a RIF topic, apply, and actually win. Funny thing was, they lost the email telling them they were invited for a full proposal and ended up having just 1 week to put together a full proposal. And having never even done an SBIR, that was quite an effort, but they ended up getting $2.5 million for some really good high-tech project that they are going forward with. Defense Department and others really like this, so they're going forward with that, and it's an opportunity for any good company. Next slide. So as Brad mentioned, it's split 4 ways: Army, Navy, Air Force, and OSD. OSD is just managing all the other DoD components: missile defense, DTRA, defense threat reduction, all the others that are involved. They started off big time. Congress appropriated 439 mil, and then it's typically been, well, close to 250 million a year, but no funding for FY20, as was mentioned. I heard yesterday from someone well positioned, it's not in the FY 2021 budget either, but that still remains to be seen because they're on a continuing resolution. So who knows, it could be put back in. So if your companies tell their representatives about how much it's meant to them, you know, that can help in getting it back in to talk about some of the successes especially. Now, Congress certainly has had concerns about the effectiveness of RIF. Possibly outsiders, you know, were telling them, oh no, that RIF program isn't doing much. So that's why OSD commissioned TechLink to assess the effectiveness of this. Next slide. We got the data back in October of 2019, so not very long ago. And the data actually wasn't that great. I will tell you the Navy had the best data. Thank you, Brad. As usual, they do pretty well in almost everything, especially related to SBIR. But as it turns out, when we were looking at the first awards, FY11 through FY16, we had a total of 677 listed awards and found out, well, about 7 of those were actually never made for various reasons. When we say FY 2011, the awards are actually made more than a year later. So it might, the solicitation might come out in March of FY11, but the awards would tend to be towards the end of the next fiscal year, like September of 2012. The last awards in our study were made or completed just a few months before we started the study. Total value, 1.4 billion. 88% of these awards were made to small businesses, and we confirmed at least 60% were derived from prior SBIRs. Some of them were actually to larger firms or organizations that were so-called successors in interest to prior SBIRs. And 189 of these were actually designated as formal phase 3 awards, which was pretty important for these companies to keep some of the SBIR data rights and other valuable properties that a phase 3 provides to the company. Now, it could have been even more. We found that 478 of these awards, or 71%, were made to companies with prior SBIRs, so maybe a lot of them just didn't claim that they were derived from prior SBIR because they couldn't make a direct connection. Next slide, please. So we did an assessment by finding contact information for all of these companies. Like I said, the data was not great, so our researchers did a great job in digging through and finding contacts for these companies and their successors. We had a formal letter of authorization from the OSD RIF program manager, who's not there anymore, and we guaranteed the company's anonymity. We would not even tell DoD their specific results, just aggregated data to be presented, with the exception if they volunteered to let us present a success story or at least a summary in our final report. And we were even doing videos, but as of yesterday, we've canceled the video production because it's gotten just a little too complicated to get that through Public Affairs Office approval. But we did obtain responses for 96% of all these awards, which was great. Next slide. So overall results were that 57% of the RIF awards transitioned, that is, they're in current use by the military or will transition soon, at least according to the survey that we did. And that's pretty good, especially considering that a lot of these awards were completed so recently. When we did previous studies of SBIR, looking at 17,000 DoD Phase 2 awards, it turned out that it takes typically 10 to 12 years for an SBIR award to really make some commercialization results or transition results. These companies had a total of $2.4 billion in military sales or services. We weren't really looking at economic impacts, but that's a great number because that's nearly double what the initial RIF investment was. So that means DoD was getting a lot out of this. And a lot of the results were provided to the DoD for free. You know, sometimes it was just a prototype the DoD needed for something, or often it was software that they had government use rights and were using. And there are also an additional $410 million in non-military sales. Some of it commercial, a lot of it was to law enforcement, U.S. allies, etc. Next slide. So here are some of the results by year of the solicitation. Again, the FY solicitation, those awards typically started in September of 2012. And you can see the darker color is already transitioned, and the lighter color expected to transition soon. Because it takes so long to, you know, get something really developed and into the defense acquisition programs, you can see the most recent awards had a higher percentage that are expected to transition. I think at the beginning of the program, you know, the transition rate increased a bit. It's kind of like a new program start. It takes government personnel a little bit of time to figure out all the details and get it to work better. Next slide. By the component, this is one of the few studies where the Air Force beat the Navy. Sorry, Brad. But it wasn't by much. So the Navy always does well in all of these, and Army, you know, had some issues there. OSD, with all the different components in there, did surprisingly well from our perspective. Next slide. Looking at each one by year, something funny went on in 2014, especially with the Army. I'm not sure what happened there, but the results were not really great, and we're hoping that these components take a look and see maybe what happened in 2014, but just information by year for each of the components. Next slide. Navy also had that little dip in 2014. So Brad, you got to dig into that and figure out what happened in 2014 that, you know, was a cause of that dip in transition. OSD actually did pretty good that year. Don't know why, but so it's not across the board. Next slide. Innovation categories, you know, about 37% classified their technology as revolutionary, and a third said it was disruptive. That's pretty strong measurements of how innovative the technology was. A lot of it too is evolutionary, and there's overlap, so it doesn't add up to 100% here. Next slide. We looked at the categories of impact. And again, there's a lot of overlap. Some of these technologies covered multiple areas like survivability, mobility. Performance was the top thing here. And readiness, as in, you know, having readiness for weapon systems or the war fighters to be able to deploy immediately or quickly So that's always important for the military. And sustainability, of course, is very important, especially for cost effectiveness. Next slide. Other additional impacts, you can see all of these different things. Improved capabilities was the big thing covered by most of these. And a lot of smaller things like reduced weight, greater mobility, reduced maintenance, manpower. All of those things were very useful, and you can look into the details of that certainly in our report, which is online at the RIF website. Next slide. Now, since a lot of you are in Kansas, I thought I'd let you be aware of which companies in Kansas have won RIF awards. This is public information. Leading Technology Composites had 3 awards, and they were doing a lot of ballistic protection. And Integra Technologies, also in Wichita, was doing integrated circuit forensics. Now, they didn't give permission for a success story, so I can't tell you about their outcomes. But if any of you have contacts there, you might want to talk to the companies and just see how they did. Next slide. I want to tell you about a few other successes. This company, Cummins, was a pretty interesting one. Major issue with defense these days is counterfeit electronics. You've probably heard all the things about China providing counterfeit electronics. There were also reworked, salvaged chips and electronics boards and things like that that were being sold as new, and those do not have the reliability as expected for new circuits. But the big thing is counterfeits from China could have secret backdoor cybersecurity issues. They could design it so that, you know, Congress found out that a lot of these counterfeits were in U.S. military aircraft, and the concern was, they could hack into our systems if worse came to worse here and take control or find out information and or cause them to fail at critical time. So that is not anything we really want. So this company had a real-time non-invasive screening. When you put signals into these chips, they produce certain RF frequency signals that are unique to every chip. And by looking at these carefully, they were able to tell, is this exactly the chip it's supposed to be? Because if there were any variations, a rework, a counterfeit, it would produce a different signal they could find out immediately. And this company did this from prior SBIR work. Next slide. This one is kind of fun, Garner Holt Productions. They never had any prior SBIRs, but you've probably seen some of their work at Disneyland, Universal Studios, even Chuck E. Cheese. They did animatronic figures for immersive training. You've probably heard, you know, that in training war fighters, they would set up fake villages in the desert to look like Afghan villages, Iraqi villages, etc. Now, if you just have dummies in there or project something 2D, it's not realistic training. So they often got paid actors, and that's expensive and sometimes dangerous because they'd be using simulated weapons that, you know, could cause some harm. So it was not a real good option to have the live paid actors for this. So the company made these animatronic members that could stand in for the actors, and they could be programmed to change their responses, change responses to events, speak different languages, and they could even be stabbed and shot with non-lethal weapons and come back strong and just be wiped off if they were, say, using paintball guns, and come back for the next iteration. Next slide. This one is almost scary for some folks. Pieper Nanolabs started doing forensic DNA analysis. Now, everybody is familiar with the DNA analysis. Normally it's an issue of matching this to, if you have, say, you're looking for someone who committed a crime, if you have DNA samples, you can match them up and say, oh yeah, this person did it. And that's expanded in recent years at online databases. You can find their close relatives and work backwards. Golden State Killer was found that way, by looking for someone who was distantly related and doing a genealogical matchup. But this is different. They have a database where they can compare details of the entire gene to look at phenotypes or traits. So they can tell you what the sex, eye color, hair color, ethnicity, background, and create an image, really, that the useful composite image to tell you what this person probably looks like. Now, they can't tell you the age, but they can make some guesses normally by what they were doing. So this is really a powerful forensic capability for figuring out who might have laid down an improvised explosive device, who did some terrorist act, or it's being used by law enforcement for criminal research here in forensics. Next slide. Now, this is a cool one, and this is an example of a foreign firm that was involved in RIF. Prox Dynamics was located in Valsted, Norway, and they developed the most capable, smallest UAV around, the Black Hornet. This little tiny thing has 3 cameras on it. I think my close-up image disappeared out of there. It can fly up to 25 minutes. Does sorry about that. Anyway, this UAV is really great in that it can provide all sorts of reconnaissance capabilities for the warfighter. They put 2 of these in a little chest-mounted pack that holds their video receiver and controller. And again, it has infrared and high-definition cameras and video capabilities. And this company was bought in 2016 by US-based FLIR Corporation. And sadly, you know, these are not being sold to the general public. I'd love to buy one myself, but we can't get them. They're only selling them to the military and other qualified buyers here. So that's a cool one that, you know, helped with the alliances that the US has with our NATO members. Norway was one of the founding members of NATO, so it's a great relationship builder with our allies here. And that's it. Back to you, Brad.
Next slide, please.
Brad, before we go on, just a quick catch up on questions, confirmation. So with the Navy RIF, does that include Marine Corps needs?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And speaking of the Marines, so this, to continue on with a couple more success stories. So in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, a lot of Marine trucks would push a mine roller ahead of them to help detonate IEDs at safe standoff distances, and they would skip over if the truck was moving at too high of a speed. The mine rollers were hopping over IEDs, so some Marines had to drive pretty slowly. There's also a lot of maintenance associated with our existing system. So the Marines had an SBIR topic on this issue for a better mine roller wheel assembly. And this company, small business, GS Engineering, won the phase 1 SBIR, hit it out of the park. Won a phase 2 SBIR, hit it out of the park. The Marines said, you know what, this thing is ready to go and we need it in the field now. So a topic, the Marines put a topic in the RIF EAA. GS Engineering competed competitively for it and won. And you can see the results are pretty sweet for this company, to my previous point about getting out of R&D contracts and into production contracts. One of the neat things about the RIF legislation is that on your RIF contract award, the government can bake in options where they can, if you're successful in the 2-year RIF project, they can just start dropping money on it to start procuring units. And this company, the Marines bought a whole lot of units from this company. So this is a pretty typical, I tell the story because it's a pretty typical route for RIF coming through the SBIR program. Next slide. Okay, and then this is a story of a company not necessarily coming through the SBIR program. This was this is a company called excuse me a second, Mayflower Communications out of Massachusetts, and they developed an anti-jam GPS antenna that was smaller and lighter weight than existing systems. They did this under various BAAs and under various streams of money. But and this company was good at my advice to your companies is they were doing that hard business development work, and through that BD, they met a tech scout from PEO C4I. This is the PEO within the Navy that does command and control information systems. And that tech scout saw their data and the results, the technical data it could produce. And he said, hey, could you make it a little smaller? Could you make it the size of a hockey puck? Because if you could, we could put it on small unmanned systems, and this could be a game changer. Sure enough, they could. They put in for a RIF. They won. And another point I wanted to make on this is they didn't go it alone. A common pitfall in RIF is small businesses thinking that they can solve the whole enchilada on their own. Mayflower Communications subbed to one large prime to help with the testing of their system. And they subbed to another large prime to help get an assembly line ready to produce this. So it's a strategic move on that company's part. And the result is this thing has ended up getting deployed all over the military. You'll see Air Force platforms, it's touched Army platforms, and I believe it's deployed in the Navy now too. I think that's the end of my remarks.
If I could ask a question of both Brad and Ray, I mean, one of whoever can answer, but I mean, I am a huge fan of RIF, and I just can't believe we're not funding it. I would love to help any efforts to get that done. But is there a program that is out there that is similar to RIF that you would advise small businesses to turn to at this point, or does it just not exist?
Well, I'll jump in and say that no, without RIF funding, there isn't anything quite like it for getting technology quickly into defense acquisition programs. SBIR is great, and a lot of DoD components, especially the Navy, have been getting better and better at follow-on funding to provide phase 3 funding to SBIR firms. But there's not anything else like this that is really dedicated and that also allows the non-SBIR firms. Like I mentioned, a company I worked with earlier that just could never get it together for a competitive SBIR proposal. They got frustrated by the program, but RIF ended up being a real winner for them and helped them get into DOD and also other federal programs.
So what are the chances that we think of it getting refunded or funded for FY21? Anybody have any guess? I know I won't hold you to it. We promise. Brad, are you hearing anything, or Ray?
Yeah, I'll weigh in on that one first. I guess the folks I'm talking to who I'm hearing 50-50 odds is kind of what I hear folks saying. I'll say I think that the conundrum here is this program is never something that the services asked for. The Navy, the Air Force, OSD has never put RIF in their budget request. It's never made it, in the official budget request to Congress. And so I think to a certain degree, Congress called their bluff on that this past year and said, all right, you guys don't want it, we won't pay for it. And so I think that's interesting. I think the long term, I think there's a question of whether it gets funded in FY21, and then there's a question of long term, what is, if this program is good, and if it ought to stick around, how, who's going to pay for it? Do the services want to pay for it? Does Congress want to pay for it? Over to you, Ray.
Yeah, well, the organization that is the strongest advocate for both SBIR and RIF is the Small Business Technology Coalition, SBTC, led by Jerry Glover. And we just had a discussion with him and OSD yesterday about the RIF program. He's been looking at our report. OSD has published our report. Don't know how it's getting to Congress because they're certainly not pushing it directly to Congress. Other people can download a copy of our RIF impacts report and provide it to some of their congressional representatives. There have been folks who have been sowing doubt about the efficacy and the effectiveness of RIF. And as Brad said, it was kind of pushed on the Defense Department. So that means it's real easy for some of these doubts to take root and tell Congress that, well, gee, if we can't hear how well it's doing, maybe we should drop it, at least for now. So talk to the companies who have had RIFs or who have been real interested in RIF, and they can certainly talk to their congressional representatives about, their interest in having this funded again. We were also tasked with providing a number of success stories. I kind of showed you some brief synopses of these. It's been taking a lot longer than we had hoped to get these success stories through public affairs, but they will eventually. And so those are also really good ammunition for telling congressional representatives, about what some of the impacts have been, what are some of the successes. Individual success stories seem to have much more power in conveying the value of a program than just the overall numbers. So, individuals do that, very well.
One other quick question, and then I'll leave it to everybody else. But would you encourage us to talk to not only Congress, but also Air Force, Navy, the leadership in the different branches? Do they have any ability to help get this done?
I'm going to say not directly. If if some of them are made more aware of successes that have come through and how it's supporting the warfighter, then if a congressional staffer comes to them and says, or what are your experiences with RIF, they might be more likely to say, oh yeah, we had some good results here and there.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. For FY21, the ball is really in Congress's court. Either Congress will fund it or they won't. Long term, I think there could be value in talking to leaders in the military. I think of Mr. Roper in the Air Force. He's a real thought leader these days. I think of Mr. Gertz, ASN RDNA in the Navy. These guys are pressing for innovation. They're pressing for working with new partners out there. They're pressing for streamlining bureaucracy. And I think if folks like that can hear from the small business community, hey, this is a really important program, perhaps that could be efficacious. Over.
Thank you.
So we've got a couple of questions wanted to cover. First one, just more of a point of clarification is when RIF was active, is there just one RIF solicitation per year? Okay, and then second of all, it can't be, there can't be a solicitation, obviously now we understand, without, at this point, without Congress funding it.
That's correct.
So is there any active RIF going on to complete anything, or is everything completed now? All the existing fundings?
We're still in the process of awarding FY19 RIFs through 30 September. We've got a few days left. There's a few stragglers, but once those projects have been awarded, they will keep executing. Each of them will have a 2-year period of performance. Okay. And the military will continue to steward that taxpayer investment. But unless there's future funding provided, there will be no more new RIF awards.
So the real gap is about to hit after September.
Yes.
Okay. What is this? Someone's asked, what is the difference in getting technology to the DoD versus getting it in the hands of the warfighter?
Well, there's a lot of subtleties involved. Getting it in the hands of the DoD in general could be, say, a software or test equipment that might be used at one of the DoD facilities, like Arnold Engineering Test Facility to do wind tunnel testing. That can be very useful, but it's indirectly supporting the warfighter. Whereas something that supports the warfighter directly is being used by them in the field, like medical equipment that they're using now to check for traumatic brain injury, or it could be, say, one of the companies we had was a coating that's used on missile launch rails that are used on F-16s and other aircraft. So it's being used on a weapon system. So that's direct support of the warfighter.
Okay. All right, so I want to go back and ask, re-ask, if you will, or inquire. First of all, if we're in support of the RIF program, our action item is to reach out to our local congressional representatives and senators to see if we can get them to put this back in. That's our step, because there is, for us to be able to go out and reach out to DoD, our access from the Encountering Innovation would be going to the tech scouts. You know, the people that Brad, you and Ray know who we're talking about, the ones we've seen the last few years. And I guess we're thinking that's probably extremely long term, and because this sounds more like a standoff between the DoD and Congress as to who's going to pay for this.
Yeah.
So if we want it, I don't think we care who pays for it. It's all, we see it from our end, it's all the same taxpayers' money. So I don't know that we can see a difference there. Going to the question then, Laurie asked, what's their alternative? What's the small business person's alternative? Laurie, maybe this is a question for you. With what we're trying to do moving forward, we're about to hopefully announce our agreement to work through our CARES Act and work with existing businesses that have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. That's our focus. That's how we can spend that money. And our effort is to help commercialize those that have had negative effect. You've been talking to us about OTAs. We've heard words OTA, CRADA, PIA. So a lot of different acronyms floating around. What is the, and I don't know if this is too big of a question to answer, but how does the client look at as they go forward? Obviously, RIF, Brad, I think, did a really good job of pointing out this is more mature technology. This isn't your TRL 2, 3, and 4. Really, you've gotten to 6, and we're trying to get it to 7 to 8. Is there an alternative, or is there a focus opportunity that they should be exercising? Should they be watching for something? Is it not an SBIR? So how do they, if it's not SBIR, and I guess that's the first question is, are there DoD SBIR opportunities that would affect a late TRL or a later TRL, a TRL 5 or 6? Or by then, are they too mature and so SBIR does not work?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're getting in the latter, that was the beauty of RIF, right? I mean, I knew a lot of people who had product who were more mature, and they were too late for SBIR. And so that was the great thing about RIF. It filled that gap. So, you know, that's why everybody keeps saying they want to commercialize technologies. So we had this great tool that, by the way, if you look at how the years progressed and as Brad got better and better at it, his numbers of success increased over time. That's true of all programs. I mean, when they're first launched, you kind of figure out how to use them. Well, here these guys, Brad and all the folks at RIF, progressively did better and better and better and better and better. And we had better results. And then at a time when everybody's wanting to see results, they pulled a RIF funding. I wanted to hear from these guys. I mean, I kind of know there isn't anything else out there, right? That's like RIF. But I wanted them to say it, not me. You know, there are other ways. You know, I just did the phase 3 presentation with Frontier Technologies. GSA has rolled out CSOs. You know, you can do GSA schedules. There's a lot of creative things. You've got PIAs out there, such as TechLink, that might be able to help. They may have a shout out for a program to develop with the military. And Ray, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's 52 PIAs out there or some number like that. So, you know, that's what we're going to do the deep dive in. What we're planning to do, Brad and Ray, for your information, is to do a kind of decision chain, if you will, of kind of the different processes that these small businesses are going through. And, you know, if they're under this scenario, here's some recommendations of things that they look at moving forward on. And if they're at this stage in this scenario, here's another path that they can take. So we're going to kind of help put together a process for the counselors to better counsel the businesses with some unique different opportunities to help them commercialize. And I just want RIF to be one of those tools again. So again, I'm just one person, but if we can get the word out to our delegation and talk it up to DoD leadership, to me, RIF is what everybody wants. So it makes no sense to me that they didn't fund that program. And Ted Bajewski was the head of RIF, and Ted and I have been good friends for years and years and years. he's the one, he left OSD RIF, obviously. But yeah, I've known it's a great program for a long time, and we need it back.
Well, in the absence of RIF, I would say to companies, you need to do all the things, continue doing things that are most effective, that would make you effective in any type of contracting opportunity, such as SBIR. And most of it is partnering, find partners. If you're a small business, partner with some other small businesses, partner with big prime contractors. Talk to them, see how you can work with them, either as a subcontractor or just co-developing something. Talk to the Department of Defense laboratories, companies that work with the labs to co-develop technology under a cooperative R&D agreement or CRADA, find that they can really position themselves for better opportunities. And when opportunities come up, they'll be viewed more effectively because, wow, you've got a partnership with Navy Research Lab or one of the Air Force labs. Well, you must be more competent because I'd never heard of you before, little XYZ corporation in Kansas. But if you've got this going, you must be doing something right. There's also some things changing dramatically in recent years. One of them is look for a consortium. Consortium? Can never say that word. That is doing something in a technology area you're involved in, because being a member of one of those can make you eligible for OTAs, the other transaction agreements. And there's other ways to be eligible too, but that seems to be very effective for a number of companies. So partnering in any way possible and with the bigger players, the defense labs, can get you far. And don't forget SBIR. If you win any SBIR, whether it's a USDA, NSF, or DOD, if you've completed a phase 1, you are eligible for sole source preferential follow-on contracts from the government, as long as it's something the government wants and that fits what their needs are. So USDA may not be likely for a DOD follow-on. NSF might be. DOD's funded a number of follow-ons to NSF awards. But, you know, government can do follow-on sole source, you know, for applicable technologies they want if you've completed even a phase 1 SBIR. And I did have a USDA SBIR where they completed a phase 1 and got a big follow-on contract from Department of Interior before they even did their phase 2. So look at all of these opportunities that you can.
So we've got I didn't notice my screen was not scrolling the questions. We've got a few more questions, or the question/comment. Bijo in Texas says, it seems to me that the AFWERX SBIR model seems to be modeled on the RIF to some degree. Is that a fair assessment?
I can't say it's modeled on the RIF. AFWERX has more or less taken over the Air Force's SBIR program, and they're doing some innovative things with it, some push to get faster turnaround, more awards, quicker, and they seem to be doing a very good job of it. So in some ways, yeah, it does kind of follow the RIF model. But I haven't really interacted directly with the AFWERX folks to get the details on that.
So I launched the original AFWERX model for the Air Force. And they have worked on awarding things faster and making things happen faster. I can tell you that there is another big revision going on with AFWorks. It's going to be managed out of AFRL. It used to be under half 5 in the Pentagon, and it kind of remains to be seen how that change is going to take place. I've been staying fairly close to that, and they're still trying to determine what that's going to look like and how it's going to be managed. I'm hoping it's going to be even better than it was before, that it'll be an improvement, but I'm still waiting to hear who's going to be in charge, how is it going to be managed. That decision hasn't really been announced, and or I don't think is fully in place yet. So AFWorks kind of remains, we'll see what changes are coming down the pipe.
So Bijou,
that is all SBIR money, though. It's not RIF money, just so you know.
right. So Bijou follows up with, if that's the case, and it sounds like it's either AFWorks or AFRL, wherever it's going to reside, that I'll chime into what Bijou is saying and my personal assessment. From what we heard from David Shahady last year, it seemed to me what we were hearing was, and this is Allenology, but it was commercialization is our highest priority, and we need it to, or prefer that it be innovative. But it was like, it's not the other way around. We don't need innovation that might be commercialized. It was like, we've got to commercialize, and it needs to be innovative. It's like, it's the same thing if you push it together, but if you pull it through, it has to be commercialized too, which I think Brad said and Ray may have said, and that is, you got to find your customer, and which goes back to what we're trying to do with Encountering Innovation Conference is, number one, work with the tech scouts so well that we can talk to them. We have an open communication with them to where we have a better chance of trying to discover the PM or the PEO, which is what we hope to have this year at the conference. But if we can start trying to understand the PEO or the PM, those that are actually deciding, where we can have a closer connection with the customer. Are there programs or conventions or conferences where the PM or the PEO is presenting or talking to the public? Is there a place where we can go to listen to them speak and present their needs or how they're going about their process? Or do we have to stay looking at Air Force, Navy, and Army and however they're going to do their however they're going to do their innovation program?
Actually, I want to ask Brad a question, and just for anybody who wants to do business with the Navy, and I might get it wrong, but Brad, is it Ship Tech that's every other year? It's usually in Charleston.
Yeah.
Are you agree with that?
And I don't know what's happened to it with COVID and everything. I'm sorry, Laurie. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm going to tell you, for any small business that wants to do business with the Navy, and you want to talk to customers, people who can push for your product to be purchased, Ship Tech is every other year, and it's in Charleston, and it's free. And I have never been to a Navy conference that people make themselves, those people who can push for your technology, make themselves so available and so approachable as Ship Tech. And I've not heard a lot of people talk about Ship Tech, but just from personal experience, it's never even been a conference it's not a conference where hundreds and hundreds of people go to it either. But all of the leads for programs who are really seriously looking for technologies, when I've attended that conference, are there and accessible. So those are the kind of things we need to research and get out to the small businesses.
So Bijou has stepped up for us. He says that, I don't know if I can't seem to grab it because it's in a comment or question, so I can't grab it, Bijou, but he found it under onr.navy.mil, and then I don't want to read the whole thing, but it's Conference Event ONR ShipTech 2020. So if you Google it, you can probably find it. Bijou, if you could email that right quick, we'll be glad to grab it and put it in with the comments in a way that Mindy can share it to everyone.
It actually got canceled in 2020, but like I said, it's every other year. So they will not have it, at least in the past. They may have it in 2021 since they canceled it in 2020.
Okay.
But typically it's every other year. And if I were going to counsel a small business that had a Navy product, that would be one conference I would really urge them to go to is ShipTech.
Yeah.
Because it's a great conference. And again, it's free.
That's great, Laurie. If I could chime in, Alan, I wonder if you could advance the slides a few. There's a org chart of the Navy organization. If you could just pause there. So this kind of gets into that as like just learning, the organizational structure is a starting place. The Marine Corps just this week, to start in the upper right, the Marine Corps has a conference every year called Modern Day Marine. It's in Quantico, Virginia. It's free, and that's a great chance to talk to program managers in the Marine Corps. It's every September. It was virtual this year. There's still a couple days left in it, but if any of your companies are trying to sell in, land vehicles and things that the Marines need, that's one I'd recommend. If you look in the middle, Naval, it's a yellow box. They're the organization formerly known as SBIR out of San Diego, California. Every year they have something called Navy Gold Coast, which is a small business focused event. It's every August. It was virtual this year, but that's a great one for if you have companies that are focused in the, on cybersecurity or information sharing or satellites, everything that's related to information. That's the command in the Navy. I would just point out there, there's industry days are a good chance, I think, to go and listen and meet PMs, and that you just have to, if you go to the specific command websites, they'll often give you information about industry days. And then if you could advance another slide, Alan, maybe. So here, so the way, and Ray can comment as well. He does a lot of tech scouting as well, but I'm on so many email. The way the military is doing tech scouting right now, it's all electronic. Like, folks aren't really going out to meet with companies and physically, but the way it's happening, it's all electronic. I mean, like you all are doing it too. But I would suggest, if you have valuable companies who have a quad chart, who have a mature product, is send it to one of these. Scott Bartlett's the head of Navy RIF, but the rest of the folks on this list work for me, and they will talk to you. They get paid to, and we'll help them figure out if the Navy might be interested in what they're offering, and who within the Navy organizational structure. If you could advance another one, Alan. Our kind of common process is each of these commands have a RIF lead, and in many cases they're the SBIR lead, and they're kind of the belly button for each of our what we call systems commands. So when credible technology comes to us, we typically, the next step is to pass it through these folks, who then pass it down into a program management office. That's kind of how we do tech scouting, and we're doing that even though the future of RIF is uncertain. We're still doing that. Over. Thanks.
Brad, we're not going to be done with you. Alan and I are going to be stalking you in the near term when we get started on this CARE program, because we're on a mission to streamline getting to those people who want the technology, because these small businesses get bumped all over the place, and we need to get them to the customers. So I will be calling you.
So I want to try to do justice to the questions or comments, which is kind of difficult to do while I'm listening intently and taking notes. I'm going to go from most recent back. Monique from Texas says the Army using the Spartan Awards, which seems to be focused on commercialization. Do you know about this, and can you talk how this relates to RIF? It seems to be under the AAL. A bunch of, Ray?
No, I'm not really familiar with those. Army does things their own way, and
well, Army's trying to sort through what they want to be. They launched Army Futures Command and renamed all the posts under CCDC, and everybody, I think, is still trying to figure out how they're going to operate. That's what I know. I am working with one of the main CCDC locations, and I could certainly ask them directly about that. But I can't speak to it myself.
well, certainly down in Texas, you'd want to be looking at the Army Futures Command, so should be some opportunities there. But I also wanted to mention SOCOM, Special Operations Command. They have a lot of flexibility in terms of fast acquisition. I mean, they don't need the broad range of stuff that, say, Navy and Air Force does. They're much more limited, but they are often a very good route for some quick acquisition, just because they are able to do things quickly, and getting a small start for a small business is sometimes the way you want to go, you know, rather than trying to get the biggest customer in the world all at once when you can't handle that. So with SOCOM, they have an organization called TILO, T-I-L-O, the Technology Industry Liaison Office. So if you just Google SOCOM and TILO, it'll take you to their website where they have ways to submit ideas and technologies that they may find interest in. And SOCOM also has an annual conference called SOFIC, the Special Operations Industry Conference. The next one is going to be in Tampa, May 17th through 21st. Now that one is put on by NDIA, the National Defense Industry Association. And I would certainly recommend any of your companies who are looking at defense opportunities to get in with NDIA and find out the full range of conferences that they put together. Because again, the more connections a small business can make, the more opportunities they can take advantage of. Over.
So Ray, I think part of what you're talking about really speaks to most of the people in the audience, and that is the small business advisors. For us, I think if Bill and myself leading for Kansas, and then Bijou and Barbara in Oklahoma and that type of thing, if we can, part of what I would like for us to do is, we can't go to everything as an individual or as a statewide program. If we can start to work closer at demystifying some of this and being able to coordinate, like what Monique asked, I'm like, I want to pass it back to her, and I don't know if she's still, yeah, I think she's still on, is, okay, why don't you go deep dive Spartan and let's and see what you find out, and let's do a lunch and learn or another follow-up training here with what you find. Monique, you and Bijou, I challenge you to see what you can find, and let's present it. That's part of what would help us is our businesses won't be able to go to all of these. And that's part of the problem, is they've got a small pool of funds. And I've told them in the past, everyone seems to be worried about the shark in the tank. And I'm saying, you're going to bleed to death from the leeches in the tank first. You most likely will never encounter the shark. And so what I think we as SBDC advisors have to do is help direct them where they don't bleed to death, and that we can help find the right best solution. And your SOCOM is a very good one. We had Lisa Sanders on, so we're trying to do that this year. We're going to try our best to find a home, a first best place for our clients to search, to be looking, to where we can help direct their paths a little bit, to where they're not just running in all directions. Let's see, David Burnett, is there anything a small business PI can do in our state, and I think he's in Colorado, to urge Congress to approve a fiscal year 21 RIF budget?
Yeah, just urge your congressman, right, to support it.
Yeah, I think that's the best at this point. I think if we all start reading, and I don't know how many they need. I think, Ray, your point with who you pointed out in Wichita for Kansas, I've made a note of both of those companies. I will definitely reach out to them and see what we can find out, and see if we can open some doors of communication back to their delegation.
And
Well, and sorry, go ahead.
I would say the most effective way to influence a congressperson's position is for the small business to say how it helped them, how the RIF helped them get something that really made a difference for the warfighter, for the Defense Department, and how they could not have done it otherwise. And that's one of the things we're trying to do with our series of success stories that we're trying to get out.
This is Bill Carey. I would just add too, since we're talking to mostly, people that are serious about this, and SBDC people, a few companies as well. If RIF was available today, most of our innovators couldn't apply for it because they haven't done their homework anyway. So to what Brad and Ray, you both pointed out, is just because it's not a budget item right now, you shouldn't slow you down on getting to know who you need to get to know. And I think one of the things that we can do as advisors, not only that we have to do the legwork, but help them to see through the maze and to narrow their field. Just say, hey, I think I need to do this. Well, who's your target audience? If it's SOCOM, where within SOCOM does this seem to fit? Or, what conferences do they have coming up? And look, and if you targeted one, you don't target all of them because you can't do them all, but try and use the internet and the resources and maybe a few phone calls to narrow their thinking. And they can do a lot of their own legwork. But sometimes, I know as a small business guy myself, I've read RIFs, done a lot of SBIR work. I've never submitted a RIF, but I've tried to do it with one of the primes, and it's really intimidating. But if you can just stop and just take a deep breath and help that innovator to sort through it, they can do this. But usually they just focus on their technology and they don't really work on the other side of their business.
Yeah, I would say, Bill, that's part of what what we're going to try to do this year. After encountering innovation, is to try to help with that focus. I think that's a wise point, is you still got to find your customer. If you find your customer, we tell people, our small business advisors, when they're working on a new product, it doesn't have to be, quote, innovation, but a new product, and they're looking to get funding to be able to manufacture, produce, whatever they're doing. They go and get a purchase order. We tell them it's like gold. You go to the bank with your purchase order and you have a much better chance of getting whatever funding. You still have to, all the business parts, the cash flow and that type of thing, the business plan. But a purchase order makes a big difference. Well, that's exactly what we're talking about here, is go find your customer. Without a customer, you can't get a purchase order. Once you get a customer, then you got a much better chance of being able to look at the different steps of what that purchase order or that intent looks like. So I think that's a good point. I'm still trying to honor the stuff coming in. Bijou followed up with any experience or comments for the panel here on Project Vulcan with SOCOM. Have you used it, or what's your take on it for small businesses?
I can speak to that if you'd like, since SoftWorks was part of my organization as well. SOCOM uses Vulcan and speaks to Vulcan, but from the small business side, which I was always really interested in, I have not heard of a lot of small businesses having their product found on Vulcan. I was on a mission to develop a different, better program. I'm actually involved with a company that is working with OSD R&E on a better program to manage technologies for DoD. I actually think that the technologies need to be managed at the OSD level, and it needs to be more than just a database. And so, and that's a big push that's going on right now that that I've been involved in. So I haven't heard for small businesses that Vulcan has brought any fruit forward. I've heard of small businesses going in and putting information in Vulcan. I have quite honestly not heard of anything coming out of it. That's just from small businesses telling me what I've heard.
And I think the question, Bijou, the reason why Laurie's sitting here right now is almost exactly what you're asking. After we had told all of our clients to go put their COVID innovation that they could answer to in Project Vulcan, because we were told to, then we were told to now go back and place stuff in AFWorks under their, what was it called? They had a name for it, but AFWorks with COVID. And I called Laurie to get her opinion. So to your Project Vulcan, the second half of that was, now do they need to go, is it gonna really count putting it in the AFWorks program? And was asking her opinion. And that's when I found out that she might be available to work with us. So I agree with you. I think that's part of our problem. Our clients, to our advisors now I'm speaking, our clients only have so much bandwidth. And part of our challenge and why we want you on this call today is we really need you to understand that there's value in big successes. There's huge economic impact in big successes. And the people I see on the call, we have one or two, I see two of them that possess clients that are encountering big success right now. Those big successes can pay for economic impact for years, not a year, but for years. So part of this is understanding that you're going to have to work as an advisor. You're going to have to cultivate for a while in order to possibly find one of those to succeed you and to grow this. And I encourage the others to step up, learn more like you're doing here, and let's help each other by getting a deeper dive into one of the programs and then telling us, I'll do the deep dive information on this. Monique came back and said, she said, Alan, I can definitely look more into this on what we were talking about with the AAL. And she says, right, I know right now they have an SBIR 2020.5 out of cycle due in October. That's part of what I'm talking about is many hands make for light work. We need you to participate and step up, either find a client that you want to help, that you need to help, and that you're discovering things for, and go be the deep dive in that. If you will, then you can step up and say, here's what I'm learning. Very rarely will you share something that will have a direct competitor to your client that meets that application at that moment. So it really will help us if we can work together. And that's part of what I hope we can do or have as an outcome out of this, because we need your help. We need your participation. That's my sales pitch. I think that covers all the client questions. If I missed one, Stan asked, is the 19 RIF awards to be awarded, are they now closed? Obviously, Brad, the answer to that is yes. at this point, they're wrapping up those that had been notified, and they're trying to get the awards contracted. So there's no new business there. Would that be a right way to say that, Ray?
Yeah, I think Brad's off right now. Yes, RIF is done. What Brad had said is all the awards have been already decided. He's got to make some more awards between now and the end of FY20, which is
It's a few days.
30th, and then they'll be managing those for 2 years. But there are going to
Right.
be no new awards moving forward. So
Right. This is just contracting, getting the contracts completed. So yeah. Okay, I think we've wrapped up. I know we've gone long. Part of that was technical difficulties. I had no idea. Nobody could hear me. I had several people notifying me. I'm going to have to put my phone on some kind of way to where it doesn't bug me, but it lets me know. I appreciate Brad, Ray. Ray has, we've seen Ray and Brad. We've seen Ray in Huntsville. I think it's where Bill and I met him. And really appreciate your efforts and all that you do. And hopefully we can continue to work together and share information and help all of our clients. So we appreciate you guys being here today. And certainly Laurie for stepping up and helping us coordinate this. That's has been a big help. Back to you, Laurie. Any follow-up or anything you can think of?
nope. I just want to thank Brad and Ray for sure. And we hope to be soldiers out there to help push this forward any way we can.
Very much. Okay, Mindy, I think what we'll do now is we'll close this. The PowerPoint presentation will be shared for your information. And then if you have people that need to listen to this, and I know we have some, we are recording this and we'll have this available for review for those that were not able to be here today.
Thank
All right.
you.
Well, thank you all. I've enjoyed the presentation and look forward to any follow-up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Bye.